Good morning. Today is Friday, May 31st, 2024. What is the connection between this week's Torah portion of Bechukosai, which we discussed at length last night and the structure of it, and this week's Haftorah, where we read a passage from the prophet Yirmiyahu Hanavi, Jeremiah the prophet? At first glance, it does not appear that there is a thematic connection between those two passages. And you remember we learned many times before that the Haftorah, the passage from the prophets, is chosen to read every Shabbos, a passage that somehow connects thematically with the subject matter of the Torah reading. Sometimes the connection is obvious, and sometimes the connection is not at all obvious. And this connection required Rabbi Yosef Soloveitchik of blessed memory to explain it to us. And I want to share with you an approach that he shared many years ago. The Jewish people did not only hear the warning from God in this week's Torah portion, the threat of what will happen to us if we do not keep Hashem's mitzvahs. Remember, the Parsha begins, Im b'chukosai telechu. If you follow my ways, then there are all these blessings. V'im lo selechu, if you do not do all of my mitzvahs, then that's the long, long passage we call the tochacha, the rebuke, the litany of the terrible catastrophes that will befall, and Nebuch have befallen, and I would say even Negach are befalling the Jewish people today. It wasn't just that was heavy for the Jewish people to hear when God spoke through Moshe this week's Torah portion. The Jewish people, having recently left Egypt, heard something much more frightening. The prediction of exile. Let me explain. Imagine you were in Egypt and you're a slave and it's terrible, and then God comes along and says, you're going to go free and I'm going to take you to a land of Israel, give you the Torah at Sinai, take you to the land of Israel, it's going to be yours, a land flowing with milk and honey. So you leave Egypt, the only home you have ever known, and you realize once you leave, you can never go back. That bridge is burnt. I would say figuratively and literally, in terms of at least in terms of the sea, figuratively and literally, they cannot go back. You left because of a promise made by God. By God, a promise made by God. You should be able to take that to the bank. A promise by God that you, the Jewish people, will inherit a beautiful land, the land of Israel, in which God will cause his presence to dwell in Jerusalem. That's what the Torah says. That's the promise made at the Exodus. And because of that faith, because of that trust in God's promise, you are willing to go on a journey through a barren desert with no food, no water, no supplies, only the promise that God will provide whatever we need along the way. And then, while you are on this journey, thinking only of the home that you have been promised, towards which you're traveling, you hear these words from this week's Torah portion. V'nasati es arechem chareva. I will make your cities in Israel desolate. V'eschem ezareh bagoyim. And you I will scatter among the nations of the world. V'hashimosihas migdashecha. And I will destroy your sanctuary, your Beit HaMikdash. Hold on. Wait a second. God, you mean now you're telling me it's conditional? Everything we hope for, we could lose? I don't remember that as being part of the original idea when you agreed to take the Jews out of Egypt. You didn't give us any conditions there. Now we're in the middle. We can't go back. And now we can't even go forward because how do we even know that we're going to keep it? The place of refuge, the place of salvation, you promised it to us. We can't go back. We can't go anywhere else. Where are we going? Where we are going is a place that we may one day lose. Imagine the utter despair of the Jewish people in the desert hearing those words. It is to speak to that feeling that we read the Haftorah from Yirmiyahu. In particular, there's one line which is the reason for choosing this selection as the prophetic passage to read for this coming Shabbos. Near the end of the Haftorah, Yirmiyahu HaNavi writes, the prophet Jeremiah writes, Kisei kavod maro me rishon makom mikdashenu. The place of our temple in Jerusalem will be holy forever, just like the throne of God. Wow. Just like the throne of God. Last night, we were discussing the final paragraph of Sefer Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, and we pointed out how it was the perfect ending to the book, although it seems on the surface like a separate subject, because it is the perfect response to the Tochacha passage that we just finished to give us a way forward, to give us hope, to inspire us. Likewise, our Haftorah on Shabbos in Shul puts our Torah portion in perspective. Similarly, Jerusalem means the city. There are streets and there are buildings and there are people walking in it. But the word Jerusalem means much more than just the city. It also refers to all of Israel. Many times, Israel is called Jerusalem. It's the name by which all of Israel is called. And I've shared this with you before. It also refers to the entire Jewish people. I quoted that to you. Aznei Yerushalayim. Tell the Aznei Yerushalayim. Who are the Aznei Yerushalayim? The ears of Jerusalem. The Jewish people. We are Jerusalem. And here's what the Haftorah tells us. When we take the Parsha and the Haftorah together. It may be in disrepair. It may even, God forbid, be destroyed. But that is only temporary. I promise, says God, it will be rebuilt. I promise, says God, the holiness of Jerusalem is permanent, is eternal, just like my throne, just like God's throne. So yes, there will be ups and downs, there'll be good times and there'll be challenges, yes. And we certainly know about the challenges. Even in Jerusalem, but especially all over Israel, from the north to the south. But this is a problem. Ki se kavod maro me rishon makom mikdashenu. The place of our temple in Jerusalem will be holy forever, just like the throne of God. It could be damaged. It could be in disrepair. It could be wounded. It could be weakened. It could be hurting. It could be traumatized. But here's the promise from God. The promise from God. All of that is temporary. I promise, says God, it will be rebuilt. I promise, says God, you will be healed. I promise, says God, the holiness of Jerusalem and all of its meanings is permanent and it is eternal. Just like God says, my throne. This Wednesday, we celebrate the anniversary of one giant step in the process of God's promise, which is unfolding in our time. And as I said to you before, it's not a straight line. It goes up and back a little bit and up and back a little bit. We celebrate this Wednesday, Yom Yerushalayim. We celebrate the reunification of Jerusalem in 1967. We celebrate the reunification of Yerushalayim. We celebrate the return of Jerusalem to Jewish control. Yom Yerushalayim. May God's promise be fulfilled, completely fulfilled, in all its layers of meaning. And may God's holy temple in Jerusalem be made as permanent as God himself, as permanent as God's land in Israel, as permanent to the Jews themselves. And may the earlier words in our Torah become true. V'nosati shalom ba'aretz. I will give peace to the land. V'yishavtem levetach ba'artzachem. And you will dwell in Israel in peace. That is the promise that is starting to unfold on Yom Yerushalayim. May we see that promise fulfilled completely in all of its layers. My friends, I wish you a good day and a beautiful Shabbos, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.